most viewers are unaware that there was a seventh team in Legends of the Hidden Temple. The Yellow Frogs were that team. The team featured a golden yellow t-shirt with a dark green frog for its iconic symbol. This made the team stand out, as all the other teams had a yellow logo on their colored shirt. This episode was never shown on air, and only an unedited version of the tape exists. This is due to the horrific and unexplainable accident that took place on set. Only a handful of people have ever seen the tape, and there was no audience at the time, since it was merely a pilot. The episode was called The Skull of Acomapically. The feature artifact was the skull of the first leader of the Aztec people. It had made its way to the hidden temple by unknown means, and it was placed in the throne room on the chair. The teams ran through the various obstacles, the moat, the steps of knowledge, and the temple games, but the Yellow Frogs were a powerhouse, and they were able to complete all the challenges first. However, there were several strange mishaps along the way. The moat. This was a fairly simple first challenge. Both players had to cross the moat by walking on a rope bridge with a rope above that they could hold for support. The moat would also have a flow of water that made it similar to rapids, which made it hard to cross since it would try to knock the players off. Everything had gone well for the first member of the team, crossing it with little trouble. But as soon as the Yellow Frog's second member stepped onto the rope, the water turned a dark red and it began to heat up. Small rapids became very strong and started rocking the rope harder and harder, trying to knock the runners off. Splashes from the red water touched one of the runners' skin, and it would start to burn. Some of the runners got scared and turned back while four of the teams continued on, unaware that this was not part of the game. The Yellow Frogs was one of the four that made it across. As soon as the last team crossed, the moat returned to its normal color and temperature. Staff ruled that the machine that controlled the water was tampered with, but the video surveillance did not show anyone around the machine. Steps of knowledge. The burns were not that bad, and thanks to the waivers that the parents had signed, they could not be held liable for any physical damages to the kids. The British decided to carry on. At the steps of knowledge, the teams were provided a story about the skull of Acomapically by Olmec, just as any other episode of the show. At first, Olmec was acting normal while telling the tale of Acomapically. However, whenever Olmec spoke of his great leader's name, the big stone-faced statue would slowly power off with his mouth wide open, speaking in a lower tone that sounded demonic. They would have a few staff members run over to check the malfunction and have to restart Olmec. After the third time the stone face spoke his name with his mouth open wide, a large group of spiders, not just any spiders, Cyclocosmia, listen, alright? Can't pronounce everything right. Came sprinting out of the mouth and began to attack the nearby staff. After attacking the staff, they all ran into the nearby moat and drowned themselves. Some of the staff that were bitten were rushed to the hospital to receive medical treatment. As the runners were not attacked by the spiders, and the producers did not care about the staff, they decided to proceed with the game. The remaining staff members were able to get Olmec turned back on and continue the story. As Olmec finished the story, his huge red eyes began to cry the same red water that had been in the moat. Right as he spoke the last word of the story, his eyes burst into flames. The staff ran over and put the flames out and investigated the red water, and it looked and smelled exactly like blood. They could not come up with an explanation except that this was a prank done by one of the staff members, maybe a disgruntled member who was not being paid enough. The Yellow Frogs and the Silver Snakes were the teams to reach the bottom of the steps and move on. Temple Games. Temple Games were about the same as any other episode. physical obstacles that relate to the artifact of the episode. Nothing out of the ordinary happened to the actual games, but there was something eerie in the air. Random sounds started to come from the temple, such as birds chirping and frogs croaking. One of the children thought they had saw something move around in the temple. They could only make out a shadow of a person. The temple had already been set up for the temple run, so all the remaining staff were out front helping, and there should have been no one inside the temple. Those sent in a few staff members to take a look to make sure that it wasn't some staff member or one of the children who had got lost running around. But all that they could find was that all the doors were open when they had originally been shut. The Yellow Frogs won the second and third temple games, making them the winners. They were only awarded 2 half pieces of the Pendant of Life. Unlike later episodes, they would be given 1 full pendant for winning the third game. This would mean that the second runner would have no Pendant of Life going into the temple, and if they were caught, it would be game over instantly without a way of protecting themselves. The temple run. It was time for the Yellow Fox to run the temple. At first, the children were afraid to continue on after the evil and disturbing events that had happened earlier. The producers came onto the set and reassured that these events were just pranks by a crazy staff member. They had caught them and there would be no harm done to them. The children still refused until the producers offered to add an additional 1,000 to the prize for just entering the temple. This was enough to make the children enter. Too much money had been spent on creating this show, and they had to make sure the pilot was completed. The first to enter was the girl. The host gave her the spiel about entering the temple as well as the prize information for retrieving the skull, which was Space Camp. She was given the only Pendant of Life and began her run. She made her way up the steps and entered the room of the 3 gargoyles and was immediately met by a temple guard and was forced to give up her pendant. She continued on and was doing fairly well until she had entered the Shrine of the Silver Monkey. Now, if you know the Shrine of the Silver Monkey, it is very infamous for being one of the most difficult challenges in the temple run. As she began to grab the pieces to make the Silver Monkey, a temple guard appeared from the door. The temple guard was dressed differently from the first one, though. Instead of its iconic feather hat, it wore a large skull with horns and was covered in blood. The temple guard quickly grabbed the girl and she was pulled through the door, slamming it after she went through. It happened so quick there was a blur on the video. Right as the door shut, you could hear a blood-curdling scream, but it was mostly masked by the music. The boy entered and began to run through the temple the same way that the girl did. The boy navigated the temple until he reached the throne room and grabbed the skull. This would have unlocked all the doors and made the remaining temple guard vanish. Instead, all of the doors in the temple suddenly shut and locked. The temple guard entered from the back doors, also wearing a skull with giant curled horns and blood all over. This temple guard, however, held a giant green stone knife and was slowly advancing toward the boy. He suddenly screamed with rage, shouting words that no one understood. He attacked the boy with the giant knife, but the boy ran through the back doors as the guard chased after. As soon as they were through, the doors slammed together and another blood-curdling scream was heard. The host ran to the back of the temple and feared that the children were hurt, while the staff called police. When the host arrived with one of the members of the camera crew, all they found were 2 sets of human bones and skulls to match. Both were wearing the Yellow Frog's shirt. The artifact was nowhere to be found, and there was no place for anyone to hide back there. The temple guards had also vanished. The police showed up and investigated the scene. They figured it had to be some hoax or some type of prank by the children and staff, because even if the children were murdered, they would not suddenly turn into bones. It was obviously a setup. They took the bones to a forensic analyst and began to search the studios for the children to arrest them. The analysts who investigated the bones were able to determine that they were real human bones and that they all matched. Police still believe it to be a prank, but they refuse to give out any additional information to the public, and the missing children have not been found to this day. In order to keep this from the media, the show producers had to pay off everyone to keep quiet, including the parents. They also retired the Yellow Frogs team by burning the shirts as evidence so that no one would ever find out about the events that happened. Some say that the skull was a true skull of Akamapikli, and that by bringing it into the temple, it made the temple cursed. Some say that the temple guards that took the children were real Aztec guards whose job was to protect the remains of the great ruler and could not return to the spirit world till they had revenge on the thieves who stole the skull. Some say that the missing children were offered as sacrifices by those guards so that they may rest in peace. Who knows?